best things they can market into it is letting them know that they have a partner with us that specializes in staffing. It's a specific staffing. And like in any industry, people want to know that they understand the industry. And it's not that other payroll companies can't do what we do. The tech can handle it. The people do it. But if there's not an SOP written, when they hear out of cycle payrolls or same days or late pays on the East Coast, where we can transfer over to a company on the West Coast to get people paid in the same day, they're just not used to doing it. So they start with no. We want to start with yes.
Welcome to Insurance Shoptalk. This is the podcast where the world of commercial insurance gets a little closer to home. I'm your host, Eric Stein, and in every episode, we're taking a deep dive into the insurance industry, from the latest news and trends to in-depth interviews with insurtech experts, carriers, and agency newsmakers. We're covering it all. So sit back, tune in, and let's start the conversation. All right, guys, I really appreciate Lee Castin and Brian Urso from Vensure Staffing Alliance coming on the show. I had a great opportunity actually recently to work with Lee on a staffing submission from one of my agents. Unfortunately, we did not win the business on this, but it wasn't because of them. It was just this scenario of an incumbent agent that got to keep the business. But Lee did a phenomenal job in the presentation and the assisting me of setting up the demonstrations and so on with my agent and the agent's client to go through all the different services, from the Vensure Staffing Alliance. And so it prompted me to think, especially if you're an agent out there that is not a temp staffing specialist, but maybe you're thinking about targeting this niche. It's incredibly deep in terms of an industry and the things they're facing there. And it was really nice to have some experts kind of guide this process. And so I knew these guys would be a great fit. So thanks again, guys, for coming on. And Lee, thanks for your help in that last meeting.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And so why don't we just kind of dive right in then? Why don't we start with Lee and kind of give a quick story of your background and, what you do at Vensure Staffing Alliance.
All right, my name is Lee Castin. I'm the Vice President of Sales for Vensure Staffing Alliance. My background, I was self-employed for 18 years. A PEO in the Scottsdale area did all of my payroll for me. So when I exited my company, I figured it would be a great thing to do and go help business owners, do the things that I seen them do for me. And then shortly afterwards, Vensure HR acquired that PEO and brought me over. And then shortly after that time period, well, I say 3 years later, then Brian Urso, our division president of Vensure Staffing Alliance, asked me to come in and help grow the staffing lane. So just excited to be a part of it. It's great to work in an industry where it's very specific and we can be specific to the people in the industry.
Yeah, Brian, why don't you do a quick little intro as well?
Yeah, so, Lee and I obviously work side by side. Today, I am the division president of Vensure Staffing Alliance. Get into that why I say today. I didn't start as that here at Vensure, but I grew up with a father in the PEO industry for 20 plus years. And so I always knew PEO, but decided to actually get my 215 down in Florida life and health license, insurance license, and really enjoyed, believe it or not, what I learned in that 7-day class. And I kind of was like, I want to learn more. I was eager to learn more. So then I got my PNC insurance license and sold workers' comp exclusively to PEOs and staffing companies out of a small agency in Orlando, Florida. And then 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now, decided to jump ship out of that PNC world and learn more and dive deep into the PEO industry. And very quickly gave a lot of love to the staffing industry. Just love the operations behind it. Very similar to PEOs, actually, which is why I think it really resonates with us here at the Vensure level. But I do run Vensure Staffing Alliance now and came from the PNC world selling workers' comp insurance.
Awesome. Yeah, you get to see it from all sides then, from the PNC side and then, being on the provider side of it now as well. So to kind of again, I think a lot of agents are thinking potentially about, targeting this niche. It is a hard to place, business for workers' comp and I guess you'll tell us from other lines as well, but kind of walk us through where are we today in the industry? I know you guys are going to be going to the ASA meeting and this is coming up next month. You guys are entrenched, with what's happening. So update us on kind of the industry and what's going on with the insurance markets right now for temp staffing.
I think overall, from my lens, you have. Sorry, Lee, I saw you were about to talk
No, it's
too.
okay. It's your.
There's a lot of disruption in the marketplace. Obviously, with the economy, it's affecting everybody, I think, ever since COVID. The industry is down overall. Depending on industry, you're down a certain percentage overall. But I think that, staffing is always the first to go and first to rebound as well. From a risk perspective or workers' comp perspective, it's still a very soft market. But I do see that changing based on some experts that we've been speaking to. We feel like costs are haven't caught up yet to the claims. And so I think work comp carriers will soon be changing that, both actually from a benefits perspective as well as a work comp perspective. I feel that to be changing to hardening the market to where PEOs will not be the afterthought. They'll go back to being a forethought, I think, especially for staffing companies, of which really Vensure was founded on in 2004, was a staffing specific workers' comp option. And oh, by the way, we need to do your payroll, being that PEO that the Vensure is and was.
Got Lee, anything to add on the kind of industries and on markets?
Yeah, well, I mean, the industry and the market, and I think it goes to some things that we've learned through COVID, right? COVID kind of taught us that we can outsource a lot, like anything that can be done for our internal staff can be outsourced now. So we've taken a huge direction to that through RPO and BPO services that we'll talk about later. And I think where Brian went to as far as setting the point for this kind of conversation is who Vensure really is. Eric, you obviously, know the story better than most. You've been entrenched into it for a long time. But as Brian said, we started in 2004 as a staffing specific PEO. It's the only thing we did. We were built for the staffing industry. And it was back in, hey, we're your PEO, so as you're getting a workers' comp rate, by the way, we have to do your payroll. Alex Campos comes in 2014, acquires 100% of Vensure, and says, hey, I want to build by acquisition and internal sales, because at this time, for that beginning 10 years, there was no internal salespeople at Vensure. It was all channels, partners, MGAs, brokers, just like the people you work with in the world you come from. And that's actually how Brian learned about the company also. So boy, did we ever, if you haven't heard of Vensure, where we call ourselves the biggest name that's never been heard yet. We've done 79 acquisitions in the last 9 years. We've become the largest privately held payroll and HR company in the country. And then about 4 years ago, Brian went to Alex and said, hey, we love it. It's a rocket ship. I'm out in Chandler, Arizona. I'm sitting in a 100,000 square foot office. The growth is spectacular. But Brian was very honest with Alex and said, Alex, we kind of lost our way when it comes to staffing. We were making mistakes. We were trying to run staffing company payrolls like you'd run any other, white collar or brick and mortar, and it just doesn't work that way. And Alex understood him completely. So I try to call it our Field of Dreams moment, right? Build it and they will come. So once Brian built it and asked me to come on board, I was super excited. We now have 200 salespeople across the country that all report to us through the staffing lane. We do staffing in every single state in the country, so it allows us to stay ahead of the market. And there's other things we'll speak of as far as American Staffing Association, things we went into that have just really kind of, I think, catapulted us into the industry.
Makes sense. And are you seeing any kind of changes with the workers' comp markets if let's say a temp staffing like the one we had, Lee, we just had one code of commercial electricians versus, let's say, a generalist staffing company that might be doing construction, warehouse? Are markets tighter for multi-code, multi-class, or same for all? Like, what's going on right now in that regard?
Well, I'll say, and Brian can obviously get much deeper with his background. I always go to him on workers' comp questions, but I'll take the easy top part of it is, I don't think anyone's easier or harder, right? Because we're going to underwrite each individual code individually. So we're not going to turn down a staffing company because maybe there's one code where they're underground construction or something in an oil well that we don't do. We're going to say, hey, we can take all of this, but we're going to have to take this, this code out. So it's depending on the industry and the data. So I think it's as far as us with, partners like yourself and, other agents that we can go out to, and plus our master workers comp programs, we can pretty much place any code, but there's going to be a cost to some, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think so. From my lens, Eric, I think, being that we're not a broker anymore, you don't get the firsthand experience like you would if you were submitting to multiple markets, right? We're really focused on the Vensure side of things and what Vensure can do. But that said, we have an opportunity to see a lot of staffing clients renewals. We get to see a lot of them shopping for rates. We get to see certain things. And I think everyone would agree that if it's a homogeneous, staffing company that's focused in one specific code or one area or one niche, that's a lot less risky than a generalist commercial staffing company focused all over the place with multiple different risks that they really just can't control, or are relying on their worksite managers to control those locations. So, it really depends. But yes, I mean, we look at a homogeneous single code staffing company niche that just focus in healthcare, or, maybe they focus on electricians or a trade type business. We look at those a little less risky than a generalist staffing company, because we believe that it's easier to provide the risk management services from both a safety perspective as well as a claims management perspective to those types of clients, because it's a little bit more segmented and niche, so we could be more strategic and pointed.
Right. Now I get it. That makes more sense. And then also I'm thinking, like, if I'm an agent, I never really delved into this temp staffing world. Like, what are the simple steps you guys would recommend to get them up to speed quickly, as far as, how do you put a list together for this? What are you trying to target? Do you need to target ones that have that niche scenario, or can you do it, for the generalist staffing program? How do you reach these people? Do you need to attend these conferences? Can you do it by phone and email? What is kind of lacking out there from a marketing point? Because you guys are seeing this every day.
Right.
Any tips you could give an agent who's interested in wanting to focus and begin to learn this niche?
Well, I think everything you just said is the way that they would market to it, right? I mean, it's phone, it's emails, it's going to industry events. You got ASA, you got SIA, you got TempNet, you have a bunch of regionals. We're going to be at Midwest. I think that's in a week or two, Brian, is the Midwest Staffing Association.
In 2
Doing a
weeks.
webinar for them in 2 days. So there's all the different, ways, but the best things they can market into it is letting them know that they have a partner with us that specializes in staffing. It's a specific staffing. Like in any industry, people want to know that they understand the industry. And it's not that other payroll companies can't do what we do. The tech can handle it. The people do it. But if there's not an SOP written, when they hear out of cycle payrolls or same days or late pays on the East Coast, where we can transfer over to a company on the West Coast to get people paid in the same day, they're just not used to doing it. So they start with no. We want to start with yes.
Yeah, and I don't want to necessarily give all the secret sauce, right, Eric? But I think, as an agent, you lose on rates if you don't have the relationship there, right? Especially depending on how much the savings could be, you're going to lose. And that was one thing early on, that when I started with Vensure, being that we didn't have any salespeople when I started with Vensure, I learned very quick that we were losing accounts due to better rates. The market was softening, and it still is pretty soft. And we're hopeful, or thinking that it'll harden, and that a lot of people will start to come back to looking at PEO proposals, just the way the funding is structured for us versus a traditional. A carrier can be a lot easier and have a lot less cost, let's say, to go direct than a PEO's program would. But when it comes to targeting, I think targeting, you kind of hit on those. For us, events is a huge piece of the puzzle because of that relationship value. I think every PNC agent in the insurance world for staffing would agree that if they didn't have a relationship with that owner, or that operator, or that CFO, or that chief legal officer, that they probably wouldn't have the business today. So that's one reason we love the business. I think you have to get close, you have to relationship build, and you have to kind of wait your turn, so to speak, and allow that to kind of flourish and blossom to get that business. But for me, I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give agents is to change your tune from being just a workers' comp broker or provider to a true consultant to their industry. Know their industry, know what they go through, know what their back office operations are like. Although workers' comp is just a product, it takes a lot for that to flow, right? Even if they're on a pay-go program, whatever type of setup they're on with their carrier, there are things that need to get processed and spoken about, as far as, okay, well, how are we getting our payroll reports to generate the invoices for that, right? And so, I think if we talk about that, why can't we talk around payroll? And I'm sure, we'll go through questions later around what more can agents do to fulfill revenue streams for them. But, payroll, every client needs payroll services, right? Everyone has payroll vendor of some type, whether they're using a technology to do it in-house or they're using a third party. I guess my point here is, in my opinion, agents should talk about the entire life cycle of the employee, and what the employer is going through versus just the one, workers' comp line item. I think that's helped me be super successful in my role here at Venture and kind of open my eyes to say, wow, I can be a spend 9 times out of 10 versus the competition and still win that business, and the business owner is still happy about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think even I get locked into, speak insurance talk first, where I see where you're going. You got to A, kind of relationship build. B, you got to know, again, what the industry is facing. C, focus on that employee and how that's their whole job, that's placing employees. So you kind of forget that because you're just thinking about the insurance. So I think I know we all get trapped into that talkity talk of work comp.
Don't go whale hunting. You don't need this huge staffing account. You could bring in a generalist staffing company or homogeneous staffing company with 50 to 75 employees, and that's still a decent size revenue opportunity for the the insurance agent. So, I think I see a lot of folks kind of targeting those big accounts when really they could be in your backyard and they're payrolling 50 people. There's a lot more staffing companies out there than people think, and you got to go knock on doors and try to get the smaller relationships, because our largest clients at the venture level, by the way, came by way of startups. So, those smaller ones are ones you want to get through the door. And what I see from P&C agents is they don't want to work with smaller staffing accounts because it's not worth the revenue to them. And I just think that's a poor way of looking at the accounts, because all staffing wants to grow and it's our job to help them grow.
No, that makes sense a lot. Yeah. Especially like a lot of the agencies have minimum premiums for, the agency itself. So sometimes it falls into that scenario.
Exactly.
But I think you're right. Everyone's obviously looking for the larger accounts, but in this world, you better know your stuff. You better be a specialist to get that account, and to earn that one, because it's not like writing a plumber. Like, you don't have to know plumbing, but you got to know staffing in this area. And then I know, like, I've seen when I worked with Lee, some of the diagnostic questions you need to even ask, when you go meet with that prospect for the first time, after some relationship building, like, why don't you, I guess you could kind of weave that into the overview of what Venture offers. Why don't we jump into that, because it's more than just work comp and more than just payroll, is what I learned from Lee on that presentation. It's risk management, other things. Why don't you go kind of the core services of, what the Vensure Staffing Alliance offers?
Yeah, so Venture HR and Venture Staffing Alliance is an HR and tech company is how we look at ourselves, right? We're going to want to put the people first, right? The technology behind it is very important, but it's always your people. So when you come in with us, you're going to have all the main standpoints: your payroll, your HR, your client relations, your workers' comp, loss control, everything encompassed in that. And what Brian and we've built out is a staffing specific division. So when you deal with our HR person, they only deal with people in the staffing industry. When you deal with our client relations person, they're only dealing with people in the staffing industry, and so on. So they understand the industry, at a deeper relationship standpoint. So I think that's the main difference and something that we look at.
Yeah, it will be, Eric, if there's anyone that's going to be listening to the podcast and attending the ASA Staffing World Nashville event this year, October 22nd through 24th. We will be having the first ever PEO breakout panel too on Thursday morning at 9 or 9:30 a.m., something like that. It's on the agenda on their website. I would encourage people who are interested, especially the PNC agents, learning about PEOs, how they could be beneficial, not just from a risk management perspective, but what else do they offer? This is not going to be a venture panel. This is going to be multiple different panelists speaking to how PEOs could be a value or not a value. Sometimes we're not a fit for staffing organizations. And so, the 4 core components of venture in a PEO environment is, payroll, tax administration, HR consulting and compliance, employee benefits administration, and, risk management and workers' comp, obviously. But we really don't like putting ourselves in a box. We don't like going to market as a PEO. We like to go to market as a solutions provider, listening to the needs And one of the best areas that I can explain why is we acquired a company 2 years ago called Sunset Cove Solutions that remotes into the client's environment and processes in an Aviante, a Bullhorn, a TempWorks, and a Cores, an Opal, an ABD, and can actually become an outsourced
Those
arm
are
of the
those who don't know, those are the software that,
ATSs they work in, yes.
yeah, and
Yeah,
ATS stands for
the staffing softwares that most, if not all, staffing companies of size typically leverage or utilize. That could be an ATS, it could be just front office, or it could be back office. But we can remote into their environment and do the body of work that they need. And they could be with a competitor of ours, right? They could be with an ADP, a Paylocity, a Paychex. We're completely fine with that. We want to be subject matter experts to them. We want to do the body of work that we know that needs to get done in whatever systems or environments that they're in. And so we really creatively, strategically create a solution that works in their environment that makes sense for them. And so, again, we're not just a PEO. I mean, we have some clients even, and I'm cautious in saying this, that are workers' comp only clients, where we're just doing workers' comp for the client. And we're fine doing that if it hits the right size metrics, if it hits the right parameters. And if anyone's interested, happy to have a conversation there. But, I think, Vensure does a whole lot, and it's just a matter of understanding the needs. And we do feel like we're a solutions oriented company that could probably provide what the client needs.
No, that's great to know because I know just from my little bit of diving into staffing, that was kind of one of the issues we couldn't get around was the client had built their own software, it handled the payroll. He ended up again getting an incumbent quote that was reasonably priced, so we got to kind of keep that. But I think we built Lee built a relationship to a point where I think the next renewal we could get into have more time, to get into what we could provide. Because I know we even had their safety consultant on a Zoom call with Lee. That safety consultant was getting excited about the OSHA services that were being offered for free that they've got to pay for now for all their people, and all the different levels. But anyway, long story short, when the client hears the word PEO, they often assume you've got to change the payroll, and you guys have come up with ways around that if you need to. It's always easier for everybody and more streamlined if you can do it. I know, just from a collection of data and work comp premiums and things like that. But I like that you are getting creative so that you could help agents place more business versus running from the payroll change.
Yeah, like Brian said, we don't want to be a vendor, right? It's just that's something we don't deal with. It's a lane we don't drive in. We don't say, here's your box, fit in it or don't, take it all or not. We want to have a very customized approach. So there's, certain clients in the larger, areas, or obviously some smaller also, that will have done a very customized approach. We'll take their internal staff, of whatever that count is and put them into a PEO. And then we'll take their temp staff and put them into an ASO or payroll only situation. And then we'll take and be able to take their back office and take the non-revenue generating people there. They're doing their accounts receivable, their bill pays, and all these type of things, and turn them into a Sunset Cove outsource solution to save them money. So, there are many different ways we want to be able to customize and go deep in that. And that's where we went to an earlier question was, what can agents do? And that's if you already have the contact, you're already having the conversation, agents are going after big accounts because they're only making money off the workers' comp. If you can make money off the workers' comp and the admin on a payroll side and get paid on the back office solutions, there's 3 or 4 different ways you're getting paid now instead of just one. So why not go deep into a conversation? And Brian and myself would jump on any call with any agent at any time to help them, talk to a prospect, or even have a talk with the agent. If they went over, here's what I'm looking at, and here's what their questions are, and how do I answer this, and what's the best way to go. We just love to talk. We'll talk staffing anytime.
No, that's great. Like I know in working with some other agents that, for other referrals that I receive that, and a few of them are temp specialists. They can't co-broker. So these people that have the knowledge you guys have in the industry with the Marsh McClellans and Aons and so on, they can't help another agent, with a carrier and / conversation. So you guys can do that. Which is phenomenal. And yeah, it's a good point that you got all these like 3 different ways to make money if this solution can be an option, for Vensure Staffing Alliance could be an option versus just the work comp, and it's stickier because you're doing more.
Yeah, I mean, we went earlier over the marketing side of it, and that's one thing we didn't mention that, we can use, our size and our strength to get our marketing department. We already have all the marketing put together for us. We can use it for our agents, a partner of, and add them to it and give them slicks and things that they can send out through emails or one pagers of many different ways of doing it. So like, once again, don't want to be looking at a vendor. We want a relationship, have a conversation. What do you need? And we'll find a way to fulfill it.
Well, that's great. And then why don't you get into a little bit about how the risk management works, how, the fact that if they become part of the master policy, how that, helps the client in terms of being a partner and other educational things that'll come along with the package.
Yeah, it's funny that we're having this discussion on this timing. We have downstairs at our Chandler office right now in our main training room, there's 80 loss control specialists in a meeting, and I'm speaking with them in 2 days about what we look for in the staffing companies. So once again, when we go out to staffing, we want to have a big push in that because under our master program, we share liability in the loss. So we want to help with the back to work. We want to be able to be involved in those things. And our loss control is something that even ourselves as salespeople within Vensure do not speak to enough about what they do and the help they can have for a staffing company about turning them around into their safety and their cost savings as time goes on. Because we share in it, right? We both share that liability, which I believe is important to have both people in the same lane going in the same direction and not working against each other. So I think loss control is a huge factor.
Excellent.
Well, so I think, Eric, too, from my lens, not every PEO is the same, not every setup is the same, depending on their program structure. So as a PNC for multiple PEOs as well before coming to Vensure, each one of those PEOs had different setups. Some had guaranteed cost master programs, some had deductible master programs. Vensure specifically has a lot of different programs, some in a captive, some in a guaranteed cost, some in a deductible. Most staffing will fit into our deductible program with Sons, which, Vensure takes $1 million of risk of every claim, and I don't think a lot of clients realize that if their employees get injured and it's 200 grand, Vensure is eating that total claim amount of $200,000, so staffing, when it comes to historical, context and workers' comp, there's not a lot of money in the workers' comp for PEOs. It's more in other areas, the value, the payroll side, typically, you're going to see an even cash flow perspective when it comes to the workers' comp and staffing. But you can have multiple different types of master programs. And then depending on, which state you're in, you're either on the master group. So when it comes to a certificate of insurance, you're actually, on the master plan. So Vensure HR would show in that certificate on the named insured box, or you're in a multiple coordinated policy state, MCP state, to where you're dual named insured between Vensure and the client company, in this case, the staffing company, right? So every state is different. I think there's this misnomer though that, that the claims itself doesn't follow the staffing company and that their Vensure claims, there's different actors out there in every industry. Not every PEO is created equal. So, I always say read the fine print, make sure you're working with the right broker, the right insurance agent to help them explain what it means to leave a PEO. Again, all this kind of will be talked about as well at the Staffing World panel. But, for me, there's a ton of value to Lee's point and the shared responsibility and having a partner like Vensure really motivated to close that claim out on behalf of the insured, because we don't want to pay $1 million, if we can avoid it. So, clients sometimes will call and be like, hey, why isn't this claim closing? It's like, I promise we're trying, but it's still in litigation, or, it's on hold, so we have to follow sometimes some rules, but we are actively pushing the closing of those claims whenever we can.
PNC agents, have you run into Byberg, which is a Berkshire Hathaway company quoting workers' comp for either your prospects or clients? Well, great news. Insured Solutions, a national MGA, has an appointment that is set up to allow you to quote, bind, and service Byberg at your agency. And the coverage is in all states. It's A-rated. Startups are even accepted. There's 125,000 maximum premium, and some of the tough industries they write are construction, transportation that includes towing and parcel delivery, manufacturing, security guards that are armed and unarmed, motor mediation, and many more. So go to our website at insurancesolutions.net, click the Get Appointed link. We'll get you logins for you and your team, and can set up a webinar for training if you'd like. Also, feel free to email info@insuredsolutions.net, and I can handle the submission myself, or call 770-402-5343. Be glad to speak to you and give you more detail. Thanks.
So Eric, I know as we go through our process, we wrote something here called SMART, right? So it's going to be an online system that someone can go into through our master workers' comp policies. They put in about 7 or 8 pieces of information about the client that they're going out to, right? So when your recruiters are going out, workers' comp is a major part of your cost. So a lot of times you want to know what your cost is before you sign an agreement with them to know how skinny you can get or how much margin you can make. So they'll go into SMART, they'll do 7 or 8 questions, press a button, it goes to our underwriters. Within 24 hours, you'll get back a code and a price. You go out, you sell that code and price, it comes back to us within 48 hours, certificate sent. So it's a very easy online process made specific to us for the staffing industry to make things grow. And now you got a registry of all your codes you've ever done at all the locations you've ever had. We're going to do a THA call, a telephonic hazard assessment call, in the beginning of an account setup. Because we want someone, I tell my clients, like, they get all nervous about these calls with you guys, right? With loss control, with underwriters, with all these type of things. And I'm like, hey, a great answer is no. When someone in loss control asks you, do you have a safety plan written? Say no if you don't have one, or say, I'm not sure if it's, a good plan or valid, or if it'll pass any inspections. So it's our job then, because of that shared responsibility, to go through it, to write the safety plans for you, to be a participant in this, to go walk that light industrial facility with you and say, hey, this is a safe work environment. Or if OSHA ever comes in, that their lockout tagout's not done properly here, or there's not an exit sign there, or slip fall protection is not correct here. So we want to be that participant in these things, and those things are all included under our master's workers' comp policy.
That's great. I know agents are used to working, let's say, with contractors who are doing a bid, and so they've got to help them get their workers' comp classification and then rate set, for that bid. But this, in the staffing arena, especially generalist, it comes up like every 10 minutes versus, once a quarter or something. So that's another, I think, differentiator of understanding this world, especially in the generalist side, that you've got to provide that information. They're trying to quote that account like right then. It's a very fast-paced environment where bids can take a long time in construction.
Right, and we're going to underwrite that location separate to you, right? Because we want to let you know, hey, Eric, this location has showed a bad loss history in the past outside of you, to make sure you know if it's something you want to put your, go into. And then we can walk it, we can help turn around that, that environment and see if it's something you want to move to in the future. But we leave that up to you as far as letting you know in advance of things you may not know that have happened to other people at those locations.
Yeah, and I've noticed too that, like in the contracting world, the temp company is making a margin in the cost of insurance and their other overhead, and then what they're going to bill, that client for that category of workers' comp. So they're very incented to keep their costs low, which then dovetails into that risk management conversation you just had. They're very focused on claims, safety, because they also have to sell that back up to their client as well. So by having, unlike a carrier, they don't normally send a loss control representative out to go walk the warehouse, like you said. So having that is kind of a selling benefit to that temp company to get that new client, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And we're going to walk that warehouse not as VSA or as Vensure. We'll put on a shirt, a polo, a t-shirt of the client. So it's not like answering questions of why is this additional person in here. Once again, we want to be a part of your team and a seat at that table. Another great thing in the way we price, you had mentioned there's all these different things that are done by percentage bases, and they charge by a percentage base. So we're going to price the same way. Because one thing with staffing that we've learned is when you grow, it's easy to throw money at problems, and problems seem to go away because of the money function. But how do you operate when things retract? What happens if you have this large cost in-house where Sunset could take over and move with you as far as not having that liability on the books all the time? If you lose a large account, you could have 50 to 100, 150 people at one location. That account changes over, or there's a month or 2 months delay in those. We want to move with you, so you're never carrying a large burden on your books by having us as your, as a part of it.
No, that makes
I
sense.
think one thing too, Eric, that differentiates Vensure from a lot of competitors and or especially the traditional market. When you get a deck page in a traditional market, you have your state, your class code, and your rate. That rate doesn't change. Now you know what your rate is in the state, and so sometimes it's easier to sign and drive. From a compliance perspective, you still need to add that physical address right to the traditional carrier, to your point. So you need to make sure that that rate is good and approved now, or that location is approved. With Vensure, let's say we have, and this all works within the smart system that Lee was mentioning. Let's say we have a client who has a future opportunity, right? They're bidding on a 100 orders for one location, right? For an end client. They're either payrolling them or they're trying to bring them over. Let's say that that's an 8018 code, right? And their code is, I don't know, I'm just using California average, probably like $6, $7, right? So if their code is $6 or $7, but now they have 100 people that they could payroll tomorrow, they're typically having to go a little bit lower on those markups, right? And so I think what's unique for us is that we can negotiate by physical address what rate we are going to charge for that specific opportunity versus it being one rate for one class code. So we're actually changing the rate for that specific location than the other location that maybe we didn't really feel as good in, or it was only a couple of employees. We want to Lee's point, from a risk management perspective, and I think it's just so near and dear to us because of the way, that Vensure was really founded in that space. We really have it figured out, but we will change the rate for a specific opportunity for them to win that business at a lower markup than what we might have loved them or liked them to do, so that we can all win that business.
That makes total sense. Also, I was thinking while you were telling me that, I didn't realize you could do it by location, but that you are getting that location information. It's not just the normal model where the contractor calls the agent and says, hey, I'm quoting on this electrical company, right? Give me the code for electrical. Now you're going to look at that client location just to make sure that's the right code, because if you mess that up on the front end, the billing is going to be nuts for the client, the temp staffing client, and they're going to have an audit problem. They're not going to bill the right amount, maybe. So yeah, all that.
Clients have audits, right? They don't have to worry about that because we're the one giving them the rates. But what I could tell you too is, for the codes, we're assigning the codes, right? We're making that determination. But our team also speaks with NCCI, WCRIB. They speak to every single, authority, governmental body that governs workers' compensation class codes on a daily basis. So, if we feel like we don't know, or the scopes manual isn't perfect, we're documenting that with that bureau to make sure we're assigning the appropriate code for that specific location.
That makes sense. Now, moving on to like compliance. I know there's certain rules now too in regards to the Affordable Care Act that these folks have to comply with, even though they're temp workers. And of course, all the other, there's all the payroll acronyms that you got to deal with, and government compliance too. You want to touch on like some of the more sensitive ones that apply to temp staffing, and it's a little unique?
I would just say that, there's two parts to ACA. One is offering a minimal essential coverage plan to the employees at a voluntary basis when you're over 50 full-time equivalents. The other is Part B of ACA, which is offering a minimum value plan to the employees. Two different opportunities. What I'd say is more in that light industrial business, the more that you offer or more that you have to pay on behalf of employees, because Part B also means you have to make it affordable, which is it used to be a 9% rule as of last year. I'm not sure what it is this year, if it's changed recently, but 9% of their wages. So most staffing companies focus around Part A of ACA because that penalty is much higher in a broader breadth, because it's $4,000 per employee that you have payrolled. It's not $4,000 for the one individual. like it is on Part B, where if that individual went to the exchange, qualified for the exchange and qualified for that subsidy, took the subsidy, and then it was reported, they would get the fine for that one individual. But Part A is a much bigger penalty from a financial impact perspective. So we do focus around offering minimal essential coverage plans at the least, and then we can go up if we need to, and even create classes. What I'd say is in a PEO world, that's one benefit as well, is you don't have the same participation requirements as you do with us as you would outside of us. So where if you're trying to go to a direct benefits broker or carrier, they're going to require 10 minimum enrolled or X amount of people on payroll. Well, at Vensure, you don't have to, because of our size and those master programs, no differently than a master workers comp program, we could do the exact same thing for employee benefits and make sure everybody's staying at least, to the compliance standards that they want to. I always say that I don't believe there's any staffing company out there 100% compliant, because I don't believe the rules have really caught up to the industry where, it's not really taking them into account. But I think everybody understands that it's probably that way and intended that way. But that's kind of how we would overcome it, make sure we provide those recommendation solutions, and then handle the administration for them as well.
No, that's great, because thinking about, oh, sorry, Lee, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think for us under that is because we're already in every state, right? We're already in every jurisdiction in most states. We have 1,700 locations that we have clients in California alone. So when you're moving, it might be a new state for you as the staffing agency, but it's not for us. So when you speak to your client relations person, just like workers' comp, where it's like, hey, do I want to go move into this site? Please call us and say, hey, do I want to move into Ohio? Do I want to go? What do I have to look at if I go into Pennsylvania? And we'll tell you about, the municipalities and the jurisdictions and the school and all these type of things. So you can have a real conversation with your internal staff of, hey, is it worth the amount of people coming in to move into this state? So since we're already there, it gives us a little heads up as far as be able to have those advanced conversations with you to make a true business decision.
Right. Like what I was thinking of too on the ACA part was that many agents, at least the ones we worked with, try to shy away from benefits just because they don't want to deal with the hassle. They might have someone in their agency that might help with that, but many don't. And so, and even if they do, they don't like bringing up benefits. But in this scenario, you better be ready to address it, because they've gotten, most of the larger companies have that minimum requirement. And so, when they ask, hey, how are you going to help me with my benefits? Then you've got that instant solution, and they don't have to rely on someone else. And you guys will handle the conversation, the enrollment, with your service team, right? So they don't have to touch it.
Correct. And the other cool thing about Vensure, for what it's worth for the brokers out there, that if they have clients and, maybe our product is better and they don't really want to talk about it because they could lose commission or whatever it is, Vensure does what's called co-brokering. We'll add them as a co-broker so that they could still receive commissions. So we're still doing the work, so we need something in the deal. So typically we'll do like a 50-50 split and give them the benefit commissions on the deal as well. So if there are any that care to focus on it, because I know there are, like if you look at Marsh and Insurance, you got benefit brokers there versus workers' comp, and they kind of segment it out, but they have specialists within the same agency. We can certainly help work with those brokers out there as well.
That's perfect. Like another thing on collaborating with the agents, in terms of, let's say you have an account, and you guys can jump in on this, like the way I did it with Lee, I got the Accord application, supplemental forms, the any kind of large loss information, client listing, the loss data on the losses for the workers' comp. And then I got it in and got an indication of pricing to make sure we were in the ballpark, for the service. Got that over to the agent, just verbally, and then got Lee involved immediately after that. Once the agent gave me the okay, and they had checked with their client, can we look at this option for you? And almost depending on the situation, you almost only want to ask the client, because they probably don't know much about this model. So you might as well just get the information, get them on with you or Lee to go through it, right? Is this the best practice, as far as how to collaborate and get something going?
I mean, I'd like to say best practice is to get us involved in the beginning, right? Before even, submitting documents, but we know that that's the inevitable. It's going to be impossible to avoid, and we don't want missed opportunity, right? So we'll take in those documents, we'll give an indication out, and then hope to have that phone call. But we like to think if an agent is client facing, right, that they'd be partners with us and get us client facing as well. If they're able to, right? We know that's never the case, but the main reason for that is just speaking their language, understanding their operations, any other areas of opportunity to be able to help us grow, our product line as well as pay the agent. Sometimes there is opportunity on the table that's missed without asking the right questions. So, we just kind of say leave it to both the subject matter experts, the agent on the account as well as us as the solutions provider, and let's have conversations together.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wish I would have had that time to do it at that level and gotten Lee in earlier, because I think that would have helped, alleviate some of these concerns about transitioning from their in-house systems and such, because, you guys could have gone into the different options on the tech side.
I wasn't calling you out, Eric, I promise.
No, I know. It's already
Just
been
a little,
done.
maybe, just a
Yeah.
little. No.
Spend my time on this. Yeah. So anyway, but I like to blame the agent on that. No, just kidding. So basically, yeah, I like that, because then you can go through it, and that also begs to say we got to, unlike normally with workers' comp, everything's happening in the last minute, of the last 2 weeks. In this situation, and usually with staffing, unfortunately, they're more open to getting on the phone a lot earlier than, let's say, a construction company, from the renewal side. So getting you guys on in the front end maybe is even the best to see, because maybe the work comp is not a fit, but hey, what about some of the other items and services that'll get the agent in the door, especially if it's competing, the back office service.
Even that opportunity, just a relationship build, right, Eric, is like put a face to the name. If we just put a number in front of you, like, I don't know, if I'm myself, right, and I'm the buyer, I'm not just saying, oh, I like that number, let me have a conversation. I tend to do business with people. I think this industry does business with people. And so we just need to make sure we come to the table together early on. I think that gives us all the best chances to win. But we understand that, sometimes we got to look, workers' comp typically is the number 2 charge outside of payroll itself, right? They're the number 2 burden that staffing companies have to worry about. So I understand how if it's like, hey, it can't be a savings or whatever, we're not having a conversation. I would at least want that opportunity than no opportunity at all. So I don't want that to be misconstrued, but obviously we want to be partners at the hip.
Yes, and again, in retrospect, this was a prospect, let's say, for my agent in this case. So he was, trying to continue to earn the business, but I think there's no way it could have hurt his relationship at all. Actually would have enhanced it to come in with a staffing experts, going through the whole thorough conversation about their operation, because, he has written these kinds of accounts. Actually, we've helped him write these before, successfully as well. But in this case, it was a new relationship for him. So just having you in that door, could have made it much better. Maybe he would have lost the comp again, like I said, but could have gotten the back office service, or, that client, I think, Lee, they needed some help on the risk side, and they need some help. Probably could have used some things in the back office piece that had nothing to do with workers' comp.
Yeah, well, that's what a lot of people think of, right? When you're in a staffing company and you're running the staffing company, you have 300-400 temps out, and you're in 15 to 25 locations, and you're remembering back to that payroll onboarding you did, and what a nightmare it may have been to get this heavy lifting of moving over your payroll. So you remember those things, and you're like, even though I'm not happy with the payroll company I'm with now, I don't want to go through another implementation. So by us being able to come in, put Matt Kaplan's back office with Sunset Cove into place, have someone that completely understands what they're doing. He's going to write a complete SOP. He's going to come on site for as long as it takes to learn your process. Then he's going to take his knowledge over the industry of seeing 50, 45, I think at this point, other staffing companies he does the back office for, of what they're doing, implement those things, make suggestions. And then if the time comes where you're like, okay, now I do want to move over to what I think is a better payroll solution at Vensure, then it's up to him to do the lifting of changing the account over. So we take it in through a process. When people think of changing to a payroll, it's not the easiest thing to do, because companies don't understand staffing that take on staffing. They look at it as a multi-location brick and mortar businesses, and it's not. So they kind of fear that, doing that. So by putting in mats, letting them stay where they're at, and then slowly bringing them over is sometimes the easiest and best way, and some of our happiest clients.
No, that's great. Um, and then any other things you could think of that, could help agents work more closely with you guys and collaborating and having a long-term relationship?
Just reach
Yeah,
out. Sorry, Brian. Yeah, I mean, just reach out. Know we're available. Have conversations. If you're in the Arizona area, in Chandler, Phoenix area, I'd love to meet up. I'd love to have at the office. And then, Brian's on the East Coast, so we kind of are able to easily split the country on things like that. So, just have us be involved. And if it's not directly with the staffing company, let us be involved with you with as many conversations as we can to kind of learn these things. Because if you can give the right benefits and if you can treat your employee better than anyone else does, they're going to take the next job with you. And if they're offered to go off of you directly to the client, sometimes they'll refuse it and go into a payrolling situation because they're going to like how they're treated in the payroll and benefits they have with you that they won't get anywhere else.
yeah, I think I'll leave it with, if I know the insurance agent mindset, or majority of them, because I was one, a lot of them are hungry to earn, hungry to build a book of business, hungry for commissions, right? And at the end of the day, we have an opportunity at the venture level to provide more commissions, more earnings than they ever thought possible if they open the mindset. Where when I first started with venture, 100% of my conversation, let's call it 90% of my conversation, was around workers' comp and insurance, right? And 10% was around payroll implementations and then processing of payroll. Now it's honestly, it's flipped, where 90% of my time is focused on operations, payroll, benefits, everything else that goes to the staffing company's operations, and 10% of workers' comp, right? So still having the knowledge of workers' comp has helped me be a lot more successful in this world, being a true, what I find, consultant, because there's so much more that a staffing company needs to run their business. And so as long as you're staying true to the industry first, learning the industry, and kind of, even if it's a recommending them to payroll providers, we work well with agents. We haven't got away from it. We work with a ton today, just like we have yesterday. We plan to continue to go down that path. And, we could be a payroll vendor and still pay insurance agents. They can keep the workers' comp, right? We are, again, a PEO outside of the box. We customize the solution. We could do PEO carve-outs. That's both for benefits and workers' comp. So if they have their own workers' comp, they can keep their workers' comp. We could still do the payroll service and the PEO service while the insurance agent retains that piece of the puzzle. But again, I think if you're doing your client a service, it would be introducing them to other payrolling or technology providers. Doesn't have to be venture, right? But just learn the industry, network with the industry. If I know anything, again, P&C brokers have a very good relationship with their clients. Very, very good. And they can help recommend other partners and capitalize on their book of business and revenue personally by thinking outside the box by all the other things the staffing companies need.
Well, it makes total sense. And again, I think we all get, pushback from the client many times about this transition into a new environment with the payroll or whatever it may be. But I think going through your model with all the 3, 4, 5 different, you probably got really like 7 or 8 ways to work with them, other than just the traditional model,
Right.
like you just described. That is huge. And again, the more of an expert you have in the very beginning of the conversation, and getting you guys involved early is key. I wish we would have done it on that last one. And then also the other thing I was going to ask, and what I forgot to ask earlier, in terms of the transition, when you do make a sale, pretty much you guys and your team handle all the heavy lifting with that client, from getting them on the benefits, the payroll, the data for the employees. Like, give a 1 minute on like how that enrollment piece goes and how you guys just handle it. Because agents don't like that. They could just bind a work comp policy. They've already done enough paperwork. So, here there's a lot more to it.
That's really needy. For workers' comp, it's easy, right? It's just adding, responding to the carrier, communicating to the carrier that this now needs to go effective with this effective date. I'm not going to try to diminish the fact that there is a workload in the client side of capturing employee imports, payroll data, CSV files. How are you operating today? How can we take over the payroll aspect of it? But once that 3 to 4 week process is over, let's say, they don't really need to worry about anything again. So it is kind of a one-time implementation. Our team does do all the build outs, all the technology stuff, but there is still some things we're going to need the client's help with, or even remoting into their system to download the reports we need. We want to be as hands-on as possible, but there is still some work involved in just getting those reports over, but it's not a huge lift.
Right. The fact that you guys are the experts, when you have that team behind you that only does staffing, they can talk the talk and know their systems and get it done even quicker and easier on the client. But again, the big point is the agent doesn't have to be involved, or they can be involved as much as they want. But, most would just leave it up to you and make sure everything's going okay,
For them to be involved, yeah, that they can help, get the reporting and, communicate with their client on the needs that we have and timelines. Yeah, it's a benefit to have them in our corner for sure.
Right. What I've noticed too, and bringing even on the conversations with the client, you guys are very good at, selling through channel partners and agents and, know it's their client. You're just here to be a resource, and that's how you come across with the client. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah. Once they sign forward, though, we call it our client, right? It's ours collectively. We are partners at the hip, and there's going to be certain things that at our size that we might tell the client about, and they just need to know that we're a Fortune 500 company, and we want to provide as much benefits to the employer and employees as we can. We are an HR company at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And then Insurance Solutions is there to help kind of navigate this. We also have some monoline work comp programs in addition to what you guys are offering, so we can look at it from all angles, and that secondly, when there are issues, we can help, be the middleman to make sure that agent is quickly in the loop and does understand, the conversations that are really going on and why. And if we need to jump in and get, extra service, we know where to go with you two to get things done,
By the way, I just found out on this call, I won a $400,000 premium only account with Vensure, California only staffing account. So
Congrats.
pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, congrats, man. That's a nice one.
Yeah.
How long you been working
It's
on
nicer,
that?
Eric, if you would say we just got it.
Yeah. What happened with we?
Well, good for you, Brian. Good for you.
That's great. And hey, if
I
anybody,
told you I'm an agent every once in a while.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, congrats on that big one. And what for those of the might want to contact you guys, what's the best way to get in touch? Brian, you go first.
Just brian.urso@venture.com, BRIN.URSO@venture.com, also on LinkedIn.
Lee?
And it's Lee, Lee.Castin, Castine @venture.com. Same on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Of course, Insurance Solutions, info@insurancesolutions.net, and I can make the introductions and be the conduit for you guys to work through this option as well as other options too. So, but Brian, Lee, this has been great. I know we probably have another hour we could go through.
We haven't hit RPO, BPO. We've done no outsourcing. What are we doing here?
Yeah. Let's go to part 2 of it.
Sounds great.
So we don't bore everybody to death with
For putting this together, Eric. It was great.
No, I
Yeah,
appreciate
we
it, guys.
appreciate this.
Thanks for being on. Thanks again for tuning in to Insurance Shop Talk. If you enjoyed our deep dive into the latest trends, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, I'm Eric Stein, and this has been Insurance Shop Talk.